Hey everybody, I'm Duncan Moss and I'd like to welcome you to my first video blog using this new tablet which has been driving me up the wall, but I think I've just about sorted it out. Today I'll be arguing that the 1933 film King Kong is the greatest movie ever made. Um, it's a very difficult thing to think of what might be the greatest movie ever made. Some people might say Gone with the Wind. Some people might say Sunset Boulevard. Uh, some might say it's The Circus with Charlie Chaplin. But I think I've got enough evidence to fight a corner for King Kong, which was released in March 1933 to a tremendous reception. No one had seen anything quite like it. It was the sort of brainchild of RKO owners Ernest B. Shostak and Miriam C. Cooper and Ruth Rose. Ruth Rose and Miriam C. Cooper were very heavily involved in the script. Miriam C. Cooper had had a love for animals, including gorillas, for a very long time, since childhood, and he'd come up with this idea of a very gigantic ape that might be taken from his own environment into a totally alien world. And work commenced on the film, I think, in the late 20s. Edgar Wallace was involved, the crime thriller writer, was involved in the script at very early stages, but he died. And the movie started shooting sometime, I think it was in 1932. It could have been as far back as 1931. Um, and the film would involve an incredible amount of special effects. So they got a guy called Willis O'Brien in to do the special effects. He had a tremendous success with a silent version of Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World in 1925, and he'd worked very heavily on a project called Creation, which had to be abandoned due to cost. Though a lot of footage of model work of dinosaurs and monsters still exists. Um, when King Kong was made, you could argue that the stars were the dinosaurs and Kong himself. But we mustn't underestimate the tremendously fine performances by many of the cast. And Fay Ray, who played the heroine, and Darrow was told for her next film assignment she would star opposite the tallest, darkest man in Hollywood. And she thought somebody like Clark Gable, perhaps. Well, she got Kong, sort of this massive great ape that falls in love with her. But love is a strange thing. Uh, well, at least I find it strange, if nothing else. And in fact, the production went on for so long of Kong that Fay Ray was in another RKO movie with a fellow co-star of Kong, Robert Armstrong, called The Most Dangerous Game, or also known as The Hounds of Zaroff, and with some other people from Kong as well. And then she was loaned out to Warner Brothers to make Dr. X and The Mystery of the Wax Museum, both with Lionel Atwill, before Kong was finally released. So it was the production went on basically because the for a long time because of the special effects, which were used with stop frame photography and a lot of very uh, animation, which involved one frames at a time. and I think it took 7 weeks to film a scene where Kong is fighting with a dinosaur. And I think there was a time when they noticed there was a pair of pliers at the very bottom of the set where they had been doing the animation. And fortunately, they were able to just adjust the optical printer to get the pair of pliers out. Um, Robert Armstrong plays Carl Denham, the leader of the expedition to find Kong, and he was a very successful actor, mostly in B movies and serials. But he does and he this character that he plays, Carl Denham, is very complicated for a character in an early 30s talkie movie. Sound was in its infancy, but he's a mixture of many things. He can be selfish, he can be reckless, but he can also be kind and generous. He's a very complex character who basically decides that he will operate the camera because in his previous movies, um, cameramen have run when the animals have been charging at the camera, and he just would quite happily stay behind the camera. And the character of Carl Denham, I think, was pretty much based on Miriam C. Cooper and Ernest B. Sostak because they had made movies, well, at least Miriam C. Cooper had, in jungles and things, and I think it was based on them. And we got Bruce Cabot, who plays Jack Driscoll, who's the love interest for Fay Ray's character, and he's very good as well. He's uh, like a lot of the heroes of the films that he appears in. He gets very shy in front of a beautiful woman and gets a bit tongue tied and doesn't find it easy to say what he wants to say. Um, and I say the characterizations for the films are very good. Another character that I think is very good is the native chief, which is as he's now known politically correctly as the Skull Island nation leader, because Skull Island's the island where Kong and they all live. And he was played by an incredible actor called Noble Johnson, who was also known a bit later on in his career as Mark Noble. Now, he's got a very small part in the film, but he is very good in it. When the film is also very well directed by Miriam C. Cooper and Ernest B. Sostak. The tension as they're coming up the beach into the beginning of the native village and filming and by the way, native just means local inhabitants. So I think it's all right to use it. As they come up into the village, the chief notices them filming and watching, and the look on his face is just of one of pure hatred and indignation. It's just brilliant, and he basically accuses them of ruining the festival, working very closely with the witch doctor, and accuses them of ruining the ceremony, which is basically to summon Kong for a sacrifice. And he takes a swing. He takes a very interesting interest in Anne Darrow because, as Robert Armstrong, Carl Denham's plays Carl Denham, says, blondes are pretty scarce around here. And what happens? I won't spoil it for you because there are people who haven't seen the film. But I'd say it's got some very fine moments in it right through the whole film, and a really well directed build up to the main action, and lots of fights with dinosaurs, and the Willis O'Brien's special effects. and he had an assistant. I think it was called Buzz Gibson. Just made some absolutely fantastic model work and dinosaur fights. And Kong, of course, with his famous log rolling scene where he rolls the log, and a lot of the Denham's party of sailors meet their end. I shouldn't be laughing because it's not very funny, but the film is just great. I don't want to spoil it for you by telling you too much about it, but when Kong is finally captured, Carl Denham will say, um, I will share this with all of you. We're all going to be rich. So proves he has got a good heart. He's obviously very upset that so many men have died on the expedition. Kong is transported to New York to be displayed as the eighth wonder of the world. But Kong's not very happy about this, and he's very jealous because he loves Anne, and Anne's got a fiance now, which is Jack Driscoll. Kong's unhappy about it, breaks his chains, runs amok, uh, climbs up the highest building at that time, with 1933. It was the Empire State Building, and very sadly, he doesn't come off too brilliantly. Uh, but the film saved RKO from bankruptcy. It was a smash hit, and carried on being a smash hit in late 30s when it was reissued. But this time it had cuts because when the original release was before the pre-code, and now we had the Hayes office in America at least, and they weren't too happy with several scenes in Kong which they asked to be trimmed. They weren't happy when the foot goes down on one of the natives, crushing him into the ground. The poor guy who was crushed into the ground thought he was going to die because the hydraulic foot went down with a lot more power than he was told he was going to have. It went down with a lot more force, and being crushed into the soft earth, he couldn't breathe, and he thought, I'm not going to get out of this. But fortunately, the pressure on the foot came off when they got the shot, and he was able to get out. There's another warrior who is eaten by King Kong, close up of Kong crunching him. There's also a scene where Kong, when he's making friends with Anne Darrow, Fay Ray, he actually takes off some of her clothing. Now that made the Hayes office sit up and say, no, that's got to come out. These scenes were restored in in the 80s video, and I think they weren't very good quality, but I think the quality's been improved, I should say. Now, the special effects movies for fantasy pictures, science fiction, horror, or whatever, often develop techniques that can be used in non-horror, non-fantasy films. The big wall that was constructed for RKO was given to MGM, and they set fire to it for the burning of Atlanta in Gone with the Wind. And that's not really a special effect, but I think the special effects had to make it look like Atlanta burning, not the Kong Wall. So and Willis O'Brien was then made a sequel, which was rushed into production and was shown in for Christmas 1933. I think it was a shame. It didn't need to be rushed. If they had gone much slower with a stronger script, and it was shown Christmas 1934 or even 1935, I think that would have been a much better thing, and it could have been a better film. Kong has been in the eye of the cinema goer, not just with that one King Kong, but there was also a Japan, the company, the Japanese film company Toho, made King Kong versus Godzilla and King Kong Escapes, basically combining their creation Godzilla. That was quite an entertaining movie. It was got shown on TV quite a lot with dubbing. There's also been two very fine remakes of King Kong, one in 1976 with Dino De Laurentiis producing. If there was a disappointment with that, it's the fact that Kong meets so few monsters in the film, but it launched the career of the lovely Jessica Lange, who would go on to great things. Um, and the film was very good for its time, and it was a hit. Then Peter Jackson remakes the film after Lord of the Rings, and that's a very fine version of the film. Well, then we have a reboot in 2017, uh, Kong of Skull Island, which was just absolutely wonderful. It would have pleased Kong fans. And he was about 83, Kong at the time. He looks very good indeed. Um, the film still does very well every time it's shown on television. Whilst a lot of the stars died in the 1970s, Fay Ray lived, I think, well into, I think she had died about 2010. Um, but one of my friends actually met her and were very jealous and got her autograph. I'd love to have met her. As I say, the still merchandise comes out about the film all the time. I've got here this wonderful book called The Making of King Kong that was I bought in 19 Christmas 1981 in Kingston from uh, a cut price bookshop. It's one of my favourite books of all time. It's got the most wonderful photographs and loads and loads and loads. Well, sod's law, I can't find them. Well, of production drawings. Uh, I cannot find them, but it's just loaded with wonderful information about the film. Uh, that's a production. Still, you can't see it very well, but if you can get hold of this wonderful book, uh, I don't think it deserved to be in a shop for £1.99, even in 1981. But it's still as I say, if you can get it, it's one of my favourite books, and it was £1.99 well spent. I've got this model, this very big model, which I haven't made yet, of Kong. I'll show it there. Uh, really good likeness to the original film, because in those days they couldn't do so many facial expressions. They could do sort of dumb, angry, and mega angry. But and then here we go. This is the Aurora model that my mum got me in 1977. With a very long haired and Darrow. I seem to remember Fay Ray's hair was much shorter. This figure, I took the glowing in the dark option, and he's, as I say, I've had him for nearly 50 years. I saw the film for the first time in Christmas 1976. The BBC showed it at peak viewing time. It wasn't often they showed black and white movies. That was be one of the last black and white movies they showed in peak viewing time. It was the same day that the Dino De Laurentiis version was released in London, and then went across the country, I think, after Christmas Day. Um, that, as I say, the film still inspires merchandise to this day. And the only film I can think that could be better than um, King, or not better than King Kong, but as good as to challenge for the best greatest movie ever made is Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That might be a contender. Special. I just want to talk very briefly about Noble Johnson, who played the leader of the warriors and of the natives. He, in the 1920s, founded his own film company to make movies with black actors playing characters. While mainstream Hollywood was portraying black people in manners that a lot of people find very offensive, he was making movies using black people in major roles. Virtually ignored by Hollywood the same way that the Jewish community were making films for Jewish audiences. The company eventually folded. He was a director of the company, and he was also acting, and he just couldn't direct the company. And as his acting career was taking off, he couldn't really do both. So he concentrated on acting and always fought very hard in his career to get black actors in better roles than there were. I think it was a bit like Paul Robeson, but this man is my hero, and why isn't he more? Isn't he better known? This guy, he died in 1978. He was 96. He was a classmate of the great Lon Chaney, and he also appeared in The Most Dangerous Game, though not. I don't think in scenes with Fay Wray and Robert Armstrong. And on that movie, a young Crichton Chaney, who was the son of Lon Chaney, who the man known as A Thousand Faces, and Crichton Chaney appeared in the movie, but unfortunately his scene was left on the cutting room floor. But this guy is a real hero of the black community, and he really deserves to be have a lot more recognition than he has. In fact, even a biopic, I think, would be appropriate. Anyhow, as I say, if you haven't seen the 1933 Kong, do see it before you see the other versions. It's a really well made movie for its time, and I would contend that it is the greatest movie of all time. And of course, in 10 years' time, it'll be celebrating its 100th anniversary, and I'm sure there'll be lots of great things for that. But in the meantime, I'll sign off now. But King Kong 1933, the greatest movie ever made, in my humble opinion. Okay, bye-bye. If you like this video and you'd like to subscribe to my video channel, please do. If you'd like to tick the like button, that would be nice, or forward it to a friend. I don't mind people disagreeing with me, but guys, I'll sign off now. But God bless everybody, and see you soon. Bye-bye.